I've helped my clients generate more than 45 mil in pipeline revenue with the calls that we've booked them from cold email. And in this video, I'm going to be sharing the 21 hacks that you can use to start booking more calls almost immediately. However, if you really want to see the results, it's important to understand that you can't just implement one or two of these hacks. You need to apply everything that I'm about to show you, because while they might not be super effective on their own, they can drastically improve results when you add all of them together. Now, hack number one is the .info domain swap. See, instead of wasting money buying .com or .co sending domains, you could just offer .info instead. The biggest thing here is that sure, .com is always going to be the best. .co is probably going to be the runner-up constantly, but they're always just so much more expensive. You'll probably spend like $10, $11. You can see here this domain is about 11 bucks to get that set up, whereas with .info it's closer to $3. So it doesn't seem like a huge difference, but when you really hit the scale that you need to drive significant results, that 3x price is actually going to make a huge difference. And the thing is the difference in performance versus the difference in price is definitely not linear. For example, a client doing 10,000 cents per month is going to have around 20 domains. That's going to cost them $220 if they're using .com or $60 if they're using .info. So hack number two is the AI keyword stack. Now, the reason why I think this one is so important is that Apollo's industry drop-down filters are famously inaccurate, mostly because they're based on how Apollo categorizes companies, not how your buyer would actually describe themselves. And truthfully, there's just like not enough specificity within the categories alone to actually make sure you're reaching out to the right person. So instead, we scrap the industry filters altogether. You can essentially just use AI to generate the exact keyword variations based on your ICP and stack those in Apollo's keyword field. That way you'll end up with a list that's way more precise. And again, the more keywords that you stack, the more likely you are to actually be reaching out to the individual that you're trying to hit up. For example, if you jump in here and try and use the industry filter in Apollo for marketing and advertising, you'll probably end up with a lot of companies that are pretty far outside of that definition, like those that deal with like billboard placements or promotional products and just things like that, where if your goal is to actually hit up marketing agencies specifically, including a bunch of keywords that like only a marketing agency would have, and that filter is obviously going to get you a better result. Now, hack number three is a fun one. That is the 2 to 3 word lowercase subject line. And then the goal here is obviously to build curiosity. So something like FYI, first name, all lowercase. You could use question about topic. That one's always a good one. Again, all lowercase. But the goal obviously is just having it allude to what's maybe in that preview text, or just like get that curiosity building to push them to read the preview text instead of laying it all out there. If you do something like free creative ad strategy, someone who knows that they don't really care about ads isn't going to read this at all, even if your offer is fantastic, right? So the idea is don't lay it all out there, just kind of give them a little bit of a taste, build that curiosity, make it look like it's coming from an individual, very casual, short, doesn't do a lot of work, kind of just pushes them to the next step. Now, the next one is hack number 4, and that's Apollo scrapers. Now, this one might seem simple to some, but you'd be surprised how many people I talk to that are still paying Apollo or other database platforms directly for their overpriced information, which is mostly stale, by the way. And that just gets, again, incredibly expensive. So check out something like AMP Leads. You can jump in, basically get leads for like a tenth of the price. Most plans here are something like $240 per 1,000 leads, which is super cheap compared to paying hundreds, if not thousands of dollars per month to Apollo for the same amount of leads. And a lower cost per lead means bigger lists for the same budget, which means more emails sent and more meetings booked, ultimately more revenue. So it just makes sense. So hack number 5 is actually the opening line swap. And essentially what this entails is deleting any of your opening lines that start with anything that is really just wasting the prospect's time. Like, hope this finds you well. My name is X, Y, and Z. I'm reaching out because, and even in some cases leading with pain points, which I know is kind of controversial, but instead, because we have so little time to work with, people have such short attention spans, it makes the most sense to lead with the offer and then use the pain point line in the second line, maybe in the third line, just bring it in later on down the road once you've hooked them in with that particular offer. Again, the goal is always going to be to make sure people get to the offer. And if the offer is the priority, then why not use it first, right? You don't necessarily need to paint the picture around why the offer is relevant. You can put the offer in front of their face and explain why the offer is relevant later. So with this one specifically, we could look at the before. It'd be something like, hey, first name, notice you're running static ads on Meta, so thought I'd reach out. If we could ideate script edit and record one free UGC ad creative for you. Would that be worth sharing more? Again, they're not seeing what the value is until the second line. And with cold traffic, like, you're lucky if they read through to that point. I would say this is even actually like a far better email than most people would end up writing, because there's normally a ton more information up top before even getting to the value, right? What you could do here, and this is kind of the hack, flip it the other way around. So first name, if we could ideate, script, edit, and record one free UGC ad creative for you, would that be worth sharing more? PS, thought it would be relevant since you're currently running ads on Meta and 100% of them are static. So instead of painting the picture before the offer, we're painting the picture after the offer, making sure that they see the most valuable thing and then layering in the extra stuff after. Hack number 6 is running company lookalikes. Instead of just trying to guess who your ICP is, jumping into Apollo, Prospeo, even like PitchBook, ZoomInfo, whatever, to create lists based on your ICP with a bunch of industry filters or keywords or whatever, basically just spending weeks doing that like deep research yourself and understanding that all on your own, there's a much easier alternative. Essentially what you can do is take your best prospects or your best case studies, website URLs, drop them into a platform like AIArc, and it can automatically match and create lead lists based on a bunch of different criteria around the client or case study that you have to generate a fairly good list. You can see here, just as an example, you take a company like Red Bull, drop that into the lookalike search, and you can see all of these alternatives jumping in there. The benefit here is obviously targeting people that look exactly like your best fit clients is going to lead to higher reply rates, more meetings, and again, more revenue. Simple as that. And on top of that, you've gotten really good results for a client in the space already. The roadmap to doing the same for the next one is going to be just as easy. Then there's hack number 7, which is the preview text play. Now, arguably, I'd say that the preview text is something that I hear the least amount of people talking about. But in any inbox, the subject line and the preview are almost always read together as one unit. So ignoring it kind of means wasting valuable space that you could be using to entice people to open your email. Now, I know nobody tracks open rates anymore, but these things still do matter. So instead of just letting that first line of your email spill into the preview by default, just use it to add a second layer of curiosity that actually makes people even more likely to open. In most cases, that's going to be the first, like, let's say 5-6 words. And that also kind of highlights the importance of what I was talking about earlier with the opening line swap. The more value, the more interesting things you can stuff into the front of the email, the more likely people are to be curious, open it up, and see what you've got going on. Now, hack number 8 is the case study ICP matrix. And this is another great one for creating an accurate breakdown of your ideal customer, because instead of just trying to guess who you should be targeting, just picking a bunch of different industries and shooting out some cold emails, you can actually base it on real data and those that you've actually gotten good results for. So essentially with this one, super easy. What you're going to do is you're going to take all of your case studies, every single company that you have done work for and gotten good results for, and drop them into some sort of LLM. So for this, I'm going to use Claude, and I'm actually just going to use a random company as an example here. So can you pull all of the case studies from this page? So now once we've put it in here, you can see we've got a visual breakdown of all of the different industries, which section of the market that they're focusing on, and each one of the case studies that fall within each. So now it's really easy to follow each one of these segments sequentially through the matrix to test and see which ones perform best via your outreach. And again, by reaching out to those that specifically match segments that you've already gotten really good results for, you're able to leverage the case studies, leverage the results, and leverage the mechanism to show them that it's something that actually works. Now, if you don't want to figure out how to implement all 21 of these hacks yourself, or if you prefer having someone handle everything from infrastructure to lead list building and the email copy that you need to run these campaigns for you, you can book a call using the link below. We send over 1.5 million cold emails every single month, and I booked over 3,000 sales calls in the last year alone. So if you want to see if we can do the same for your business, just hit the link in the description below and you can book a call. But either way, let's get back at it with hack number 9, which is the worth sharing more CTA swap. So this one is actually super simple, yet super effective, because all you really need to do is replace every single CTA that mentions hopping on a call or worth the quick chat with, would that be worth sharing more? Immediately, the perceived friction or effort someone has to put into satisfying their interest or curiosity drops, because that worth sharing more could literally mean an email, a video, a call. The reader doesn't really know. And since they don't feel like they're being asked to commit to anything, your reply rate instantly starts going up. All right, hack number 10 next is drop the company name variable. And I know you've probably been told that using someone's company name in an email is a great way to personalize it, but think about it. No one actually talks like that. So when someone reads their company name dropped into a sentence, they immediately know that it's automated. especially when it's got like LLC or Co or Inc. or it's in all caps or something like that. It's so clear, which means getting rid of it and writing more conversationally will actually perform better because the email feels like it came from a real person. So my recommendation for this specifically, instead of using a sentence where the company name is pulled specifically, just use the word you and replace it that way. So instead of reaching out and saying, hey, thought this would be relevant for Apple Inc., you just say, I thought this would be relevant to you. It's a super simple swap and it makes such a big difference. So next up is hack number 11, which is using the Clay waterfall for missing emails. So if you've ever built a list on a platform like Apollo or ZoomInfo, you'll know the pain of having a list of maybe like 60,000 people and only 30,000 of them have email contacts. So what you can actually do in this situation is when you're exporting from Apollo or whatever database you're using, include contacts that have no email and just bring them forward into Clay afterwards. After that, what you can do is build out a waterfall that sequentially goes through a few, if not dozens, of different data providers to see if you're able to find that email. So in this case particularly, we used LeadMagic, Prospeo, and TryKit, but you can add dozens more in here depending on the number of credits that you want to use or the number of sources that you want to use. If this is like a tier 1 list, you'd probably want to try every single one of the data sources possible to see if there's any chance of getting that lead's email. And the beauty here is that as soon as it finds the email via one source, it just doesn't push it on to the next one. So you can tier these out based on like price or priority, the ones that you think provide the best data and you've experienced getting the best data from, and essentially it just won't run if you've already found that, compiles them all into one nice merge file. The beauty with this data too is that because it's not available on most entry-level platforms, if you do put in the extra effort to go to all of these different data sources to find that email, that person is most likely less inundated with outreach from other people because their data is harder to find. So you're going to pay a little bit more, but the people that you reach out to are going to be more likely to reply. So hack number 12, and I actually love this one. This is the PS social proof formula. And it's pretty simple. Just end every email with a PS that contains one specific outcome-based proof point. Format it like client went from X bad result to X good result using this exact process. That's obviously a generic way of saying it, but that way you're reminding people that what you offered has actually worked for someone similar in the past. And that's obviously a powerful motivator to get them to reply. The one thing that I will say is in the past, social proof had a lot more weight, and now it's a little bit deprioritized. Pretty much anybody can say anything about accomplishing whatever, which makes it deprioritized in the sense that you don't really want to have it in like the first or the second line. But if your offer is strong enough, it is worthwhile every once in a while to include it in the PS line just to let them know that this exact mechanism has worked for clients exactly like them. And it's also a little bit more conversational, right? If you just throw it in the PS line versus like something super salesy up in line 1 or line 2, find it works a lot better. And then again, that ends up putting way more emphasis on the offer and the other things within the email versus the social proof itself. And then next up, we got hack 13, which is actually a fun one. It's almost like a bit of a sales psychology hack. So this is essentially like a bit of a trick to motivate people to reply, because instead of talking about what they can gain from what it is that you're offering, you start your email with what they're actually currently losing out on, right? There's a little bit more urgency. You make them aware of the pain that they're currently experiencing before telling them the way out, right? And this works because the idea of losing out on something is always going to be more compelling than offering them something they may not even know that they need yet, right? Things like the sunken cost fallacy come into play here as well, where if people have spent so much money and invested so much on one particular thing, and they find out that the money that they've already spent is potentially like leaking through a hole in the bucket, they're going to do whatever they can to protect that bucket and patch the hole up, versus convincing them of a new mechanism with a totally different bucket, something that they're going to have to start from the ground up and really just take a shot in the dark on. So hack number 14 is going to be the one variable test. And this is almost the idea of looking at every single one of your campaigns in an almost like scientific manner, because if you really want to nail down like what's helping your email campaigns and what's actually hurting them, you can't really be making 3 or 4 changes per email at once. Instead, focus on only changing one element per version that you run. That way, if one version of an email performs significantly better or worse than the rest, you know exactly which variable is causing that difference. If you change 4 or 5 things at once and then you run a completely different email, you don't know which factor, whether it's like the subject line, the hook, the body, the CTA, so on and so forth, is actually driving the interest. Usually when we're testing campaigns, we'll start with testing the offer first. That's the first variable we're trying to solve for. Then the positioning of the offer, and then the way that we're delivering the offer, so the CTA. Now, speaking of testing, hack number 15 is the data source test. And I actually learned this one firsthand because instead of jumping straight into changing or testing copy variations, I actually started with testing my data sources and the segments first. If you're pretty sure you've got a good offer, running a bunch of variations of it isn't necessarily going to be the highest leverage thing, right? Like you already know it's pretty desirable, it's low friction, so on and so forth. So what I'll do is build the same list from a bunch of different places and obviously make sure that there's no overlap, because recently I'd sent the exact same email and offer to 5 different segments, 5 different data sources, and found that 3 actually outperformed the other by almost 10x. And not because any of the changes to the copy or the offer like that stayed the same, but because of where that data came from. So before you assume your actual emails need to change, make sure that you're also testing your data sources individually as well, because what might not work or resonate with one group of people could obviously do really well with another, right? So I'd almost recommend from the very beginning, when you're launching campaigns, start with a few different segments from a few different data sources. Again, just mitigating that risk, adding a few different variables to the segment and data side of things, while also sequentially testing different variations of the offer. That way you can look back in almost like a matrix style and be like, okay, this offer worked really well to this segment or to this data source. The same offer didn't work well for this data source. And then going into round 2, you know exactly which ones pair up with each other. All right. So now we're on hack 16, which I think is actually a really cool one. And it's essentially elaborating when something sounds too good to be true. Because if your offer is strong, there's situations where it enters that too good to be true territory, and people's natural skepticism starts to keep them from replying, right? Especially if you don't address it somehow. But if you actually acknowledge that it's a ridiculous offer and explain why it actually makes sense to them, you can remove their objections while at the same time proving you understand them and their concerns. Like we have one client, for example, that guarantees 7-figure growth in a year. That to most people sounds insane. But if you actually explain why they're able to do that, you know, they've created a formula that determines the exact type of client that they're able to get that results for, and they only work with said client, then it makes a ton of sense. And it also then builds a little bit of exclusivity and focus on the person that you reached out to, because then they're like, hey, wait, if this person guaranteed me 7 figures in growth and I fit the exact criteria of the people he's able to get that result for, then I should probably take him up on this offer because, you know, I'm more likely to get said result. Same deal if you're running like a deliverable based front end offer, like if you're doing a free ad creative or a free video or, you know, a free cold email campaign, you can literally just say, this isn't necessarily too good to be true, because it's actually a mechanism that we use to find some of our best clients. Like truthfully, we don't work with everybody, and we're using this as a way to screen out those that we're going to get amazing results for, right? Like in the cold email space, if you run a trial and you get really good results for the client in the trial, you now know that this is going to be a fantastic client going forward. Same deal with any of the other offers. It allows you to screen them as much as it allows them to screen you. But making that clear, whether it be in the email copy, in a follow-up, or even, you know, sometimes on a confirmation page later on, it just works so well. And now next up is hack number 17, which is the Loom Follow Up. And all that means is that for your second follow-up, instead of just repeating the offer or saying like just following up or something corny like that, just ask like, should I send you a 2-minute Loom video showing you exactly how this works? It's almost impossible to say no because there's zero commitment involved and just curiosity. Like if your first email was good enough and then you lower the friction then in the second email, there's a really good chance that someone's going to say yes to you, even if they're just kind of like kicking tires, trying to see what you're about. But the benefit is if you're good enough at scripting the Loom or putting the Loom together, it's going to do a lot of the selling for you. So they'll check it out, they'll watch the video, and then that then is going to become a selling mechanism. And on top of that, they end up getting very familiar with you. You start building that know, like, and trust factor, and it just becomes an easier sale if they actually do jump on. The caveat here is that you'll probably get a ton of interested leads, and then your meeting to lead ratio will be pretty low, but that's because you're bringing in people that are more MQLs, like marketing qualified leads, versus sales qualified leads, like those that are actually ready to purchase. And you just have to build out your ecosystem to accommodate that, right? Like you can always put them into nurture flows and capitalize on them later, because these are leads that fit your ICP and are experiencing the thing that you solve, which they validated by saying yes to your video. They just might not be in the position to take action on it right now. It might not be a super urgent thing that they need to take care of. So you just have to keep that in mind and build the systems to support that. All right, so hack 18, the standalone follow-up rule. Again, just a super simple hack. Literally anybody can implement it. But all it entails is writing every single follow-up so it makes complete sense if the recipient never saw email 1, because most of them probably didn't. And a follow-up that says like just circling back on my last email means nothing to someone who deleted it first without reading. And honestly, you can even take it a step further by removing the thread, so therefore not doing it as a reply and just sending it as a totally new email, totally fresh perspective, rather than showing them that you've already been ignored once and hitting them up again. Different subject line, different variation of the offer, different pain point, however you want to do that. It works so much better than just saying, just circling back on my last email. And it contains the core idea of what you mentioned in the first place, so they understand what the value is. So with this example here that I showed you guys before on the free UGC ad creative offer, if you did a follow-up email that was like, just following up on the above, interested in having me create that for you, their question, if they hadn't seen the previous email, is create what for me? I have no idea what you're talking about. And then by saying just following up on the above, you're doubling down on the fact that they ignored you. So instead you can just abbreviate it to the actual value that you're providing. So it could just be a shortened version of the first email, interested in a free UGC ad creative, something like that. Or again, we could go back to the video idea, like interested in a 2-minute video that explains our X, Y, and Z process. The idea being is that they could read the email on its own and know exactly what you're talking about without having to have the context of the previous. Now, hack number 19 is the 5-minute response time. And you'd be surprised how many people don't follow through on this one. And basically all that this entails is responding to interested replies within 5 minutes by using a webhook to push notifications directly to Slack. Or better yet, calling that person within 5 minutes, the second that you get a response. So basically you get the email response, push that lead to mobile data enrichment, get their mobile phone number, push that to Slack, call the person directly from the mobile phone number in Slack. And the idea behind this is that the faster you respond, the higher your chance of converting that reply into a book call, because your email's still fresh in their mind. They were literally just at their computer responding to you, and you'll avoid situations where they're like, who is this again? Or like, what are you talking about? I have no idea. Super fresh, super relevant. They're thinking about it. And you know they're at their computer because people bounce around, right? They could be responding to you, and then if you wait 10, 15 minutes later, then they're making lunch or something, right? You've lost them and the window's closed. And as you can see here, quick example, these are the webhooks coming through. We're enriching for mobile phone number. If we find them, we're pushing them to Slack. And then on the Slack side of things, we receive a notification, call mobile numbers right there. We can immediately click that mobile phone number and we're calling the lead, which brings us to hack number 20, which is warm calling your leads. And it's pretty simple, exactly as it states. The moment an interested reply comes in, call them. They said once yes already, use that momentum. Going back and forth over an email to schedule a time kills the energy completely. And by the next day, most people have probably moved on. By calling them right away, one, you're able to put a voice to the name. They know exactly who they're talking with. But two, you can handle any primary objections and even do some pre-qualification before the call itself. I promise you, if you put this in place, you're going to take your meeting booking rates from like 20, 30% to like 40, 50% and beyond. And you really don't need to complicate these scripts. It can literally just be like, hey, this is so-and-so from X, Y, and Z company. You just replied to my email about so-and-so. So I just thought it'd be faster if I gave you a shout and found a time for us to discuss, like does Tuesday at 1 p.m. or Wednesday at 3 p.m. work better for you? And then you can kind of just handle objections from there. You can still reply to the email, still leave a voicemail, still shoot them a text, but just putting that call out there as fast as possible within that 5-minute window is going to do you a lot of good. And finally, that brings us to hack number 21, and that's using pre-call qualifiers, because not every positive reply to your email is going to come from someone who's the right fit for what you're offering. So in situations where you've validated your offer, you know that what you're providing is of value and that there are going to be a ton of people interested, you want to protect your time, right? Instead of wasting time jumping on calls with people that were never going to buy your service in the first place, you can pre-qualify every single lead before you set anything in stone. This works really well in situations where, again, you have a solid offer, or if the leads are coming in through inbound. That way you can make sure that you're only blocking out your schedule for those who have the best chance of saying yes and making it worth your while. I'll show you a quick example of what mine looks like here, but essentially if someone wanted to book with me, because it can be fairly high volume, we're adding a series of questions to make sure that one, like they're a legitimate company, they have a website, they are established, so on and so forth. their monthly revenue is high enough to, one, to be able to afford our services, and two, to actually be in a place where they likely have product market fit and are able to get good results with our system. And then three, have a deal size where the unit economics kind of just make sense with working with us. And again, these questions are going to be different for every single person, but you got to look at these like a lever, right? So if you're getting a ton of responses and they're all unqualified, you can add friction with more questions. If you're having a hard time getting people across the board, I maybe wouldn't add any questions, or just add one, maybe two. You got to think about it as layers of friction, and you've got to work with that as something that you can control to determine how many people are coming through and making it onto your actual calendar. And this is going to depend a lot on your priorities. If you're an early stage company and you're just trying to have a ton of conversations with potential customers, figure out more about them, then data is king. You want to prioritize just taking more calls regardless. But if your calendar is, pretty sparse to begin with, and you don't have a whole lot of time, definitely crank up the qualification and the friction. And that is all 21 cold email hacks. Now, like I said, no single one is going to magically change your results on their own, but if you stack them all together, you're guaranteed to see an increase in calls and ultimately revenue, right? But if you'd like to see how I actually use them for myself to generate over 45 million in pipeline revenue for a variety of my clients, you can watch this video next, and I will see you there.